whistle that shook the final. The moment that whistle stayed silent, the entire NBA world felt it. Not just Knicks fans, not just the people inside Madison Square Garden. Everyone watching Game 3 could feel that something was off. One team was fighting through contact, driving into bodies, getting knocked off rhythm, and somehow walking away with almost nothing. The other team kept marching to the free throw line, like the game had quietly changed rules in the middle of the night. And then Tom Thibodeau said what millions of fans were already thinking. He did not scream like a man looking for excuses. He did not sound like a coach trying to protect his players after a bad loss. He sounded like someone who had watched enough basketball, coached enough playoff wars, and seen enough questionable whistles to know when a game no longer feels right. The numbers made it worse. The eye test made it impossible to ignore. In the second half, the free throw gap became the story, not the shot making, not the defensive adjustments, not the stars rising under pressure. The whistle became the main character. And in an NBA Finals game, that should never happen. This is where the frustration begins, because fans can accept missed shots, they can accept turnovers, they can even accept losing when the other team is simply better. But what fans cannot accept is the feeling that physicality is being judged differently depending on which jersey is involved. That is why Game 3 hit a nerve. This was not just about one foul. It was about every soft call, every swallowed whistle, every replay that made people lean closer to the screen and ask, how is that not the same thing? And before anyone says this is just angry fan talk, look at what happened. Players were hitting the floor. Contact was being exaggerated. Defenders were punished for breathing too close, while other obvious moments were allowed to disappear like they never happened. That is not good for basketball. That is not good for the league. And it is definitely not good for fans who still want to believe the finals are decided by players, not by inconsistency. So tonight, we are going to break this down carefully. Not with blind rage, not with conspiracy for the sake of drama, but with the question every serious NBA fan should be asking right now. When the biggest stage in basketball starts feeling unfair, how long can the league expect fans to stay quiet? Before we go deeper, comment where you are watching from. If you think the refs changed the feeling of Game 3, press 1. If you think this is just normal playoff complaining, press 2. And if you believe the NBA needs more transparency, press 3. Also, subscribe to the channel, because this story is bigger than one game, and we are just getting started. When flopping became the real offense, before the biggest no call of the night, we have to talk about the disease slowly damaging the NBA. Flopping. This is not about real contact. This is not about players protecting themselves. This is about exaggerated acting, head snaps, dramatic falls, and players hunting whistles instead of hunting baskets. And the reason it keeps happening is simple. The league rewards it. When a player throws his body into a defender, falls to the floor, and gets 2 free throws in a finals game, everyone else sees the message clearly. It works. Keep doing it. That is why fans are frustrated. They do not hate physical basketball. In fact, they love it. What they hate is fake contact being treated like real contact, while real contact sometimes gets ignored completely. That is what made Game 3 feel so wrong. Some players were rewarded for selling contact, others absorbed obvious contact and got nothing. When the whistle is soft on one end and silent on the other, fans stop calling it a mistake. They start calling it a pattern. And once fans see a pattern, the NBA has a problem. Because the finals are supposed to be about greatness. Shot making, defense, pressure, composure. But when flopping and inconsistent officiating take over, the game stops feeling like a battle between two teams and starts feeling like a battle for the referee's attention. That is why the Jalen Brunson and Victor Wembanyama moment mattered so much. After all those soft whistles, Brunson attacked the basket, contact happened, and the whistle stayed silent. In that moment, the silence was louder than every call the refs made all night. Game 3 turned into a warning sign. Game 3 was supposed to feel like everything great about the NBA Final. Madison Square Garden was alive. The crowd was loud before the ball even went up. Every possession felt heavy. Every defensive stop felt personal. Every shot carried the weight of a season. This was the kind of stage where stars are supposed to become legends and teams are supposed to prove who they really are. For the Knicks, this was not just another finals game. This was a chance to defend home court, to show the Thunder that New York was not going to be pushed around, and to remind the league that Madison Square Garden can still become the most intimidating building in basketball. For Oklahoma City, this was a chance to steal control. A young, explosive team walking into one of the loudest arenas in sports, trying to stay calm while the entire building waited for them to crack. That should have been the story. But then the whistle started taking over. At first, it felt like normal playoff frustration. A call here, a no call there. a coach yelling from the sideline, a player throwing his hands up after contact. That happens in every big game. But as the night went on, the feeling changed. The calls did not just feel strict, they felt uneven. The Knicks would fight through contact on one end and get nothing. Then, moments later, the Thunder would attack, feel lighter contact, and suddenly the whistle came fast. That is when fans started noticing. It was not one possession. It was not one referee. It was the rhythm of the entire second half. Every time New York tried to build momentum, another whistle slowed the game down. Every time the Garden got loud, another trip to the free throw line took the air out of the building. And that matters because playoff basketball is built on rhythm. Momentum is not just a word commentators use, it is real. You can feel it when a crowd rises, you can feel it when a team gets 3 stops in a row, you can feel it when a star starts attacking with confidence. But whistles can kill that. A bad whistle does not just give free throws. It changes aggression. It makes defenders hesitate. It makes coaches adjust rotations. It puts key players in foul trouble. It changes how a team is allowed to compete. That is why Knicks fans were furious. They were not just watching their team lose possessions, they were watching their team lose the ability to play naturally. And then came the moment everyone kept replaying. Jalen Brunson attacked the basket with the kind of determination that has defined his entire rise. He was not avoiding contact. He was not looking for an excuse. He was trying to make a play in the biggest game of the season. Victor Wembanyama stepped into the action, used his size, extended his body, and made contact that looked obvious enough for almost everyone watching to expect a whistle. But nothing came. No call. No explanation, just play on. And that was the moment Game 3 stopped feeling like a normal officiating debate. Because after all the soft whistles earlier, after all the stoppages, after all the moments where minor contact had been punished, this one was allowed to disappear. That is what made it impossible to ignore. If the refs wanted a physical game, then fans could accept that. If they wanted a tight game, fans could accept that too. But switching the standard from one possession to the next is what makes people angry, because the players cannot adjust to a rulebook that keeps changing. Brunson had every reason to be frustrated. The Knicks had every reason to feel like the game was being called through 2 different lenses, and Tom Thibodeau had every reason to walk into that press conference with fire in his voice. Game 3 was not just a loss. It was a warning sign. A warning that when fans stop trusting the whistle, every result becomes questionable, every free throw becomes suspicious, every no call becomes evidence. And once a league reaches that point, the damage is no longer just about one night. It becomes about trust, and trust is the one thing the NBA cannot afford to lose. The no call that made everything explode. The Brunson and Wembanyama moment was not just another missed call. It was the kind of play that changes the entire emotional temperature of a game. Jalen Brunson drove into the lane like he has done all postseason. Low center of gravity, strong handle, eyes on the rim. He was not drifting away from contact. He was attacking it, because that is what leaders do when the game gets tight. Then Victor Wembanyama stepped into the picture, and that is where everything changed. Wembanyama is not an ordinary defender. His size alone changes how every possession feels. His wingspan can erase shots that most players would never even reach. So when he makes contact with a guard like Brunson, the impact is obvious. It does not need to be violent to matter. It does not need to send someone flying into the first row. It just needs to affect the play. And that contact affected the play. Brunson was bumped off his path. The drive lost its balance. The advantage disappeared. Inside Madison Square Garden, thousands of people expected the same sound at the same time, a whistle, but it never came. That silence is what made the moment unforgettable, because earlier in the game, lighter contact had been punished. Smaller bumps had sent players to the line. Defenders had been forced to play carefully, almost nervously, because nobody knew what the officials were going to call next. But here, in one of the biggest possessions of the night, with one of the Knicks' most important players attacking the rim, the officials swallowed the whistle. That is not why fans were angry. Fans were angry because it did not match the standard already created in the game. If that level of contact is legal, fine. Let both teams play that way. Let the game be physical. Let defenders use strength. Let stars finish through bodies. Most fans would actually love that version of basketball. But if soft contact is a foul on one end, then obvious contact cannot become invisible on the other. That is where the word inconsistency becomes dangerous, because inconsistency makes people question motive. It makes every replay look worse. It makes every free throw feel heavier. It makes fans wonder if the whistle is reacting to basketball or reacting to something else. And for the NBA, that is the nightmare. The league does not need every fan to believe something corrupt happened. It only needs enough fans to stop trusting what they are watching. Once that doubt gets inside the game, it spreads fast. The Brunson no call became the symbol of that doubt, not because it was the only bad moment, but because it arrived after so many questionable whistles had already built pressure. It was the spark landing on a floor already covered in gasoline, and when Tom Thibodeau saw it, he knew exactly what everyone else knew. This was no longer about one possession. It was about whether his team was being allowed to compete under the same rules. Thibodeau said what the league hates hearing. Tom Thibodeau knew the league was listening. He knew every word could cost him money. He knew coaches who criticize NBA officiating usually get fined. But after Game 3, he still spoke up. That is what made the moment powerful. This was not a coach making excuses after a loss. Thibodeau has been through too many playoff battles for that. He knows bad calls happen. He knows physical games get messy. But this was different. The issue was not one whistle. It was the pattern. The Knicks were fighting through contact, while the Thunder kept getting trips to the free throw line. New York's defenders started hesitating. Their physical identity was being taken away possession by possession, and for a team built on toughness, that changes everything. A foul call is never just a foul call. It can send a key player to the bench. It can kill momentum. It can make defenders afraid to play their normal game. In the finals, that can decide a night. So when Thibodeau spoke, he was not asking for special treatment. He was asking for one thing: the same standard on both ends of the floor. That should not be controversial. But in the NBA, it becomes controversial because the league often protects the image of its officials instead of directly answering the real question. Was the game called fairly? That is what fans wanted to know. And after Game 3, millions of them felt Thibodeau had simply said out loud what they were already thinking. He did not just complain about a loss. He challenged the trust behind the result. The Knicks were not perfect, but that was never the point. To be fair, the Knicks did not play a flawless game. And that matters because if this conversation becomes pure fan anger, it loses credibility. New York made mistakes. They reached on defense. They were late on some rotations. They gave Oklahoma City chances to attack the paint and force contact. Some fouls were real. That part has to be admitted. The Knicks are a physical team by design. They fight over screens. They pressure ball handlers. They crash into bodies on rebounds. They play with edge. And when you play with edge, sometimes the whistle goes against you. Josh Hart plays like controlled chaos. OG Anunoby brings strength on every possession. Brunson, even as a smaller guard, competes hard defensively. That kind of intensity can create legitimate fouls. But that was never the real issue. The real issue was not whether the Knicks committed any fouls. Of course they did. The issue was whether both teams were being judged by the same standard. And that is where Game 3 became so frustrating. Because fans could see New York getting punished for physical defense, while similar contact on the other end did not always receive the same reaction. That is what makes people angry, not strict officiating. Uneven officiating, there is a huge difference. If referees want to call a tight game, call it tight for everyone. If they want to let players battle, let everyone battle. But when one team has to play carefully while the other seems allowed to be more aggressive, the game stops feeling balanced. And in the finals, balance is everything. One bad stretch of calls can change rotations. One early foul can send a starter to the bench. One no call can erase a scoring chance. One soft whistle can kill a run before it even begins. That is why Thibodeau's frustration connected with so many fans. He was not saying the Knicks deserved every call. He was saying the standard did not feel equal. And when the standard does not feel equal, the final score becomes harder to accept. Because fans do not just want their team to win. They want to believe the fight was fair. The shadow the NBA cannot escape. This is where the story gets bigger than Game 3. Because when fans question NBA officiating, they are not doing it in a vacuum. They are not inventing suspicion out of nowhere. The league has a history, and that history still follows it. The name fans always remember is Tim Donaghy, a former NBA referee, a gambling scandal, a prison sentence. A moment that proved the impossible was not impossible at all. An NBA official could be compromised. A game could be influenced. The system could fail. The league wants fans to treat that as ancient history. But fans remember. And then came the Jonte Porter scandal, another reminder that gambling is no longer outside the sport. It is wrapped around the sport. Betting lines are everywhere. Prop bets are everywhere. Injury reports, odds, and game coverage now live in the same conversation. That does not mean Game 3 was fixed. That does not mean every bad call is corruption. But it does mean the NBA should understand why fans are more suspicious than ever. When billions of dollars move around games and the league still refuses full transparency around officiating, doubt becomes natural. That is the real danger, not proof of corruption. Doubt, because doubt spreads faster than any official statement. One questionable whistle becomes a clip. One no call becomes a debate. One free throw gap becomes a theory. And suddenly, fans are no longer arguing about basketball. They are arguing about trust. That is why Game 3 mattered so much. The NBA cannot just say, bad calls happen. Everyone knows bad calls happen. The question is why the same problems keep happening in the biggest moments, on the biggest stage, with the entire basketball world watching. If the league wants trust, it needs more than silence. It needs transparency. It needs accountability. It needs fans to believe that the people controlling the whistle are held to a standard as serious as the players on the floor. Because once the public starts wondering whether the game is fully fair, the NBA has already lost something valuable. Not a game, not a series, credibility. And credibility is much harder to win back than a championship. The league's playbook is too predictable. Every time an officiating controversy explodes, the NBA seems to follow the same script. First, there is silence. The clips go viral. Fans argue online. Former players give their opinions. Coaches try to choose their words carefully because everyone knows a fine could be coming. Then, after the emotion starts spreading, the league usually gives a controlled response. Maybe it admits a call was missed. Maybe it says the officials made the correct decision. Maybe it points to a rule most fans have never read closely. But the pattern rarely changes. The league explains just enough to move the story forward, but not enough to make people feel satisfied. And that is the problem. Fans do not want a perfect league. They know referees are human. They know mistakes happen in every sport. What they want is honesty. They want real accountability. They want to know that when a game feels uneven, someone with power is willing to examine it seriously. Instead, the NBA often shifts the attention. The coach who speaks out becomes the story. The fine becomes the headline. The frustration of the fans gets treated like noise. And by the time the next game begins, the league hopes everyone has moved on. But fans are not forgetting as easily anymore. Social media changed everything. Every call is clipped. Every angle is replayed. Every missed whistle can be slowed down, zoomed in, and compared to another call from 3 possessions earlier. The league cannot hide behind one broadcast angle anymore. That makes consistency more important than ever. Because when fans can see the difference with their own eyes, a short statement is not enough. A fine is not enough. Telling people to trust the process is not enough. Trust must be earned, and the fastest way to earn it is transparency. Show how officials are graded. Explain why certain crews are assigned to certain games. Create real consequences for repeated mistakes. Let outside voices review controversial moments without the league controlling every part of the message. That would not weaken the NBA. It would strengthen it, because protecting the image of referees is not the same as protecting the integrity of the game. Sometimes, the best way to protect the game is to admit when the system needs to improve. Game 3 gave the NBA a chance to do that. The question is whether the league will take that chance or simply wait for the outrage to fade again. When fans stop trusting the game, the most dangerous thing for the NBA is not one bad call. It is not one missed whistle. It is not one angry press conference. It is not even one finals game surrounded by controversy. The most dangerous thing is when fans stop believing what they are watching. Because once that happens, every moment changes. A superstar drive is no longer just a superstar drive. A free throw gap is no longer just a free throw gap. A no call is no longer just human error. Everything becomes suspicious. And that is where the NBA is playing with fire. Fans invest too much to be treated like their concerns do not matter. They spend money on tickets, jerseys, streaming packages, travel, food, parking, and everything else that comes with loving a team. But more than money, they invest emotion. That emotion is what makes sports powerful. A fan can remember where they were when their team hit a game winner. They can remember the pain of a playoff loss for years. They can build family traditions around watching games. They can pass loyalty from one generation to the next. But that loyalty depends on one belief. The game has to feel real. The team that wins should win because it made more shots, defended harder, executed better, and handled pressure with more discipline. The team that loses should lose because it failed in those same areas, not because the whistle felt uneven. That is why Game 3 hurt so much for Knicks fans. It was not only about losing. Knicks fans have survived losing before. They know pain. They know disappointment. They know what it feels like to watch a season collapse. But this was different. This felt like watching a team fight inside a game where the rules kept shifting. And when fans feel that, they do not just get angry at the refs. They start questioning the whole product. That is a nightmare for the league. Because the NBA is not competing only with other sports anymore. It is competing with every form of entertainment on earth. Movies, streaming shows, video games, social media, short-form clips. Fans have endless options. So if the actual games start feeling frustrating, confusing, or unfair, some people will simply leave. They will not write a long statement. They will not wait for a league report. They will just stop watching. And once casual fans disappear, Getting them back is incredibly hard. That is why trust matters more than any single result. The NBA can survive an upset. It can survive a bad shooting night. It can survive a controversial ending, but it cannot survive a growing belief that the biggest games are not being judged equally. Because when fans lose faith in the whistle, they lose faith in the scoreboard. And when they lose faith in the scoreboard, the league loses the one thing every sport needs most: belief. The NBA has a choice to make. Game 3 should not become just another controversy that disappears after the next highlight. It should become a warning. If the NBA wants fans to keep believing in the product, the league cannot keep treating officiating problems like background noise. Fans are not asking for every call to go their team's way. They are asking for one thing: the game must feel fair. That means real referee accountability. If players, coaches, and teams are judged every night, officials should also be reviewed with serious transparency. One whistle can kill momentum. One whistle can put a star in foul trouble. One whistle can change a finals game. That kind of power cannot exist without trust. The NBA also has to deal with flopping more aggressively. Soft fines are not enough. When players exaggerate contact and get rewarded, the game becomes less about skill and more about acting. That damages the product, teaches the wrong lesson, and frustrates fans who came to watch real basketball. Basketball should be about courage, discipline, teamwork, pressure, defense, and shot making. It should not be about who can trick the referee better. This is not about attacking referees. They are human. The game is fast. Mistakes happen. But human mistakes need oversight. Human systems need accountability. After Game 3, the NBA has two choices. It can stay silent, find the coach, wait for fans to move on, and hope the outrage fades. Or it can take the harder path, become more transparent, punish flopping seriously, review officials openly, and prove that the finals are decided by players, not by inconsistent whistles. That would not make the league weaker. It would make it stronger, because fans do not need the NBA to be perfect. They need the NBA to be honest. So now I want to hear from you. If you think the NBA needs more referee transparency, comment 1. If flopping is the bigger problem, comment 2. If Game 3 changed how you see the finals, comment 3. And if you still believe the league can fix this, comment 4. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video with another NBA fan, because this conversation should not disappear after one night.